Hi, good to see you again. Welcome to Summer Term 3, Block 1, Constructing, Measuring, and Using Geometric Notation. Lesson 1. I'll share my screen. So in this lesson, you're going to learn how to use letters and labeling rules or conventions. Conventions means rules, the rules of how we do things in maths for geometric figures. So you will learn how to use letters to label geometric figures properly. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so that when new videos are released, you will be notified. And share the video with those you think can benefit. Before we start, I would like you to pause the video and answer the retrieval practice questions in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the retrieval practice questions, here are the answers. So for this one, you will ask, which shapes contain right angles? Of course, by now you should know what right angle notations are. So these are right angles, okay? So these are the shapes that contain right angles. So A and C. Next, you ask, which shapes are quadrilaterals? Quad means four. Chord means four. Laterals mean lines. So another way of asking you is, which of the shapes do you see has four lines that are all around the shape? And those shapes are B and D. Next, you ask, which shapes are polygons? So polygons are shapes that are bounded all around it by straight lines. And the shapes that have that description are B, C, and D. Okay, let's do our new learning for this lesson. If I ask you, look at the quadrilateral, I think you would ask me which one, because we have these quadrilaterals, but I have not been specific. So you would actually be right for asking that question. Now, if I now label the shapes with letters, and then I ask you again, look at the quadrilateral HIJK, you would know that I am now very specific. So you would know exactly the shape I mean. So that tells you the very first thing you need to know, that in maths, we label geometric figures because it helps us identify specifically the shape we are discussing or you are required to work on. The next thing you need to know is, what is the correct letter notation to describe a quadrilateral? So which one do you think of these describes this quadrilateral? Well, you may not get it right, but that's fine. The whole point of this is for you to know that when we label quadrilaterals, we do it cyclically. So the letters are read in a clockwise fashion. That's rule number one. Rule number two, it doesn't matter which letter you start with, and they are not always in alphabetical order. So if we follow that rule, you would see that the first one, LMNO, so LM, N, O, and then back to L, you always need to connect the last letter with the letter you start with. You would see that it does not clearly describe the perimeter of the quadrilateral that we're trying to describe. But look at this one, L, M, O, and then N. And then you can see that we can completely connect the last letter with the letter we started with. So that describes the quadrilateral. And then the other ones that describe the quadrilateral are these, okay, that one. So it doesn't have to be in alphabetical order. Not always. It is good if we can do it, but it's not always the case. And the last one is not, because if we check it, we'll see that it does not go all around the shape and connect properly with the letter we started with. So the last letter does not connect properly with the first letter we started with. Okay, how many different polygons can you identify in this diagram? Well, I'm sure you have come up with a few, but here are some we could get. We could have pentagon PQRST. We could have triangle QRS. We could have quadrilateral PQST. It's now time for you to practice what you've learned. Pause the video and answer questions 1 and 2 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 1 and 2, here are the answers. So here you were asked to shade the quadrilateral BCDE. So you now know the convention, how we label quadrilaterals or how we label polygons, and that is the answer. Next, you were asked shade triangle BCD blue, and then shade one of the other triangles a different color. You could have different answers. You could shade it red, you could shade it green, whatever color you choose. Next, question 3. Pause the video and answer question 3 in 1 minute. And here is the answer for question 3. EFGH is a kite. You are asked to draw shape EFGH. And that's the answer. Okay, let's move on to the second part of our learning. If I ask you to look at the line segment, again, you would ask me which one. I have not been specific. You don't know which line segment I have asked you to look for in this shape. So I'm sure you would ask me, don't you think you should label the shape before you can identify the line segment? Of course, you would be right, because if we label the shapes, I can change my question and be more specific. I can say, look at line segment CD. And we could even be more specific because line segments have length. So we can say line segment CD is 5.5 centimeter in length. What about angles? How do we discuss or refer to angles in geometry? We refer to angles by using the middle letter to identify the position of the angle. So, for example, if we say angle AED is acute, we essentially, or what we're doing is we're saying the angle is in the position of the letter E when we look at the line segments that concern the angle. So this angle AED, the angle between line segments AE and DE is at E and is described by the lettering convention AED. But how many other statements can you come up with or can you write about the pentagon ABCDE? Of course, I'm sure you would have come up with different statements, but we have to move on to our next learning. So have that conversation with the person you're learning with. But there are other things we need to pay attention to. Remember, we have to be really specific with our labeling of quadrilaterals, triangles, and other polygons. So if I say ABC is an acute angle, and I also say ABC is a triangle, which of these statements are correct? Well, both statements are actually correct. Why? They are correct because they're actually saying the right thing, but we have not been more specific. So it is much better to say triangle ABC. So the person knows that your lettering, the letters you're using, refer to triangle ABC. Can you see that that's more specific? And we can say angle ABC. So the person knows that your lettering, the letters you're using, refer to the angle ABC, knowing that the middle letter B refers to the position of the angle you're talking about. So ABC. What about when we talk about obtuse, acute, and reflex angle? Well, if we say which diagram represents angle ABC, which one would you say represents angle ABC? Well, both. Both refer to angle ABC. But a lot of the time, people would say that this is the correct one, but both of them are actually correct. So what you should do is to be more specific. So angle ABC, that refers to acute and obtuse angles. But when we talk about an angle here, we have to say reflex angle ABC. It's now time for you to pause the video and answer the rest of the questions to practice what you've learned. So pause the video and answer question 4 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 4, here are the answers. So here you were asked to complete the sentences. Shape ROST is a triangle. PU is a line segment. You can see it there. Angle QPU is a right angle. You can see it there. The middle letter tells you the position of the angle you should look at. And then here, the shaded triangle is called triangle URT. You could have called it RTU or TUR. It would still be right. Next, you're asked, the shape contains two trapeziums. Describe the two trapeziums using letters. By now, you should know what trapeziums look like. So these are the trapeziums. Pause the video and answer questions 5 and 6 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 5 and 6, here are the answers. Question 5, you were asked, here is an angle. Do you agree that Eva has described it properly? Well, remember the middle letter should tell you the position of the angle. So this angle, this is the position of the angle referring to. So we could say BAC or CAB. All right. So the middle letter should refer to the angle. Here is the answer to question 6. You are asked to use 3-letter angle notation to describe the angles. And these are the correct letter notation to describe them. Notice how the middle letter refers to the position of the angle. And then how would we describe the angle marked X? We would be more specific. We would say, to be more specific, we would say reflex angle PQR, yeah, or RQP. Here is question 7. Pause video and answer question 7 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 7, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. Question 7, you're asked, draw the given angles on the grids. Now, the angle CLN means the middle letter tells us where the angle should be. So we'll start with C, we move from L all the way to N. Here, NLC. So NLC. Okay? NLC. Okay? Next, pause the video and answer question 8 in 2 minutes. You can take longer depending on the speed at which you work, or you can take, even a shorter time. Depends on you. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 8, here are the answers. So here you were asked, some lines, angles, and shapes have been drawn. Label each angle with the letter shown. And you can see angle X should be EDI. So it should be in the position where you have D, all right, when you go from E to D to I. So E, D, and I. So it should be here. And then Y, you can see Y we want G, H, D. So G, H, and D. So you can see where the angle is. Next, you should use the correct letter notation to write the names of a kite. So the kite, G, H, I, J. So G, H, I, J. You can see that's the kite here. And then an arrowhead, D, G, E, I. D, G, E, I. And you can see that's the arrowhead. Okay. Next, a vertical line segment. It could be FC, it could be ED. A horizontal line segment could be CD or FE. And then next, for this one, for C, you were asked to prove that run is C correct. We could have 4 letters in a triangle. C could be the midpoint of line B, line segment BD. Okay, so run is not right. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. So far you have learned how to use the correct conventions or rules to label geometric figures properly in maths. And that builds a really good foundation, helping you to understand just how geometry works in maths. Well done for taking your learning seriously. Until next time, take really good care of yourself, and bye-bye.